Our Attorney General, our current Attorney General, Reginald Amo, well, he will forever be first known as Attorney General for trying to convince a Miami court that he was only a junior attorney when he was sitting in a defense of this current case. And
let it go, man.
this case, of course, is one of our Piarco civil matters that recently was concluded yesterday. Because of AG Amore's faux pas, so to speak, it allowed the former Attorney General Minister of Legal Affairs, Farah Sawari, to keep up with this case and bring it home. And of course, now I guess you could say the proverbial victory lap was thus taken by the now current Minister of Local Government, Farah Sawari. For more, time to cue this.
The people of Trinidad and Tobago can therefore now know with certainty the following in terms of summary. Number one, after 19 years of litigation in the civil arena in the United States of America, there has been final judgment, some 131.3 million United States dollars, equivalent to nearly 1 billion Trinidad and Tobago dollars. Interest accrues at $9 million US dollars per annum on that. Steps are now being taken to enforce the judgment. The enforcement of the judgment will be pursued by asking for particulars of assets, etc. The judgment is joint and several in liability, meaning you can pursue one person or all for the entire judgment sum. There is a right of appeal, not yet invoked. That right of appeal stands separate from enforcement proceedings. If you wish to stop enforcement proceedings as a defendant in the United States, you must place a bond for the entire sum of the judgment plus 2 years' interest. In steps apart from that, the state is entitled to millions of dollars in legal fees, which the state is pursuing aggressively with its attorneys. It is important to note that in the judgment that was delivered today, the final judgment, we gave a credit. It's a set-off that was applied today. So in arriving at the 131.3 million US dollars, we deducted, before getting to that sum, the sum of some $4.6 million. That sum represents monies which were received by Trinidad and Tobago. And I wish to state that some of that money was received in the course of the UNC government's tenure. So I must admit that I was quite surprised to learn that there was some allegation of political persecution in this matter by the leader of the opposition, if I recall correctly, subject to correction. I want to remind that several $1 million, United States dollars, were received by the UNC administration government, and therefore they would be well aware of the propriety of the lawsuit which was commenced. The time frame for appeal is set out between 30 to 45 days from today's date. The recovery of the judgment stands separate from the appeal. The state is entitled to pursue the recovery of the judgment while an appeal is going on, unless it is stopped from doing that. We are on the track where we are pursuing the recovery of the judgment as of today. So, to answer your question, it will involve the following parameters: having the questionnaires filled out, the declaration of what assets each of the three defendants have, the tracing of those assets, and then pursuing the recovery of those monies from them. That will continue to go day by day from today's date onward. And that will certainly involve the defendants giving detailed particulars of their assets. And those assets are worldwide assets. So that will be a process which has to be completed in a very tight time frame, and that step will be taken now. Obviously, the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago hasn't been sitting on its hands for 19 years and would have a fairly good idea of certain other things that it ought to be aware of.
That's the Attorney General yesterday at the press conference.
Former Attorney General.
Former Attorney General. Well, you can't tell with the musical chairs of responsibilities at times. You know, Minister of National Security, Minister of Energy, speaking about the RSS plane. But at the end of the day, I think, look, it to some extent validates the merits of the case. They also have criminal convictions in the United States courts. But at this point, I don't really think that was in question. What really is in question is how much money would the country really and truly, receive. I understand they're going after the assets of the gentleman if necessary, but do they even have enough assets to cover such a bill?
How much money would TNT get? Well,
We have
in the in the words of Dr. Evil, $1 billion. Anyway, all jokes aside, I think this is good news. I've always suggested that if there was any allegations of criminal wrongdoing, go through the legal process. It's taken almost 20 years, but a judgment was actually made in favor, an appeal made in favor, actually, for the plaintiff, which is Transbago, for the tune of close to 1 billion TT dollars. And the interest will accrue at over 9 million US per annum, commencing from, I think, yesterday. Now, this could still be appealed within the next 30 days. Appeal could be lodged. But at this time, I think it's good news. And I will celebrate it simply because justice has been served. I don't care what your political colors or ilk is. It doesn't matter to me. If there are allegations of wrongdoing, an investigation takes place, it goes to the courts find you guilty, it even goes to the appeal find you guilty. The next step, of course, is the recovery of the assets, as you've mentioned. How long that's going to take. But furthermore, just a little side note. Whilst it is still something to feel good about that justice has been served, I'm curious, I'm just very, very curious that because it's taken so long, I wonder, of this $1 billion, how much would account for legal fees over the last 20 years?
Right, so without legal fees, it's actually, I believe, around 900 million, right? So I don't know exactly, what the legal fee figures. I can't remember if the Minister of Local Government said it or not in the press conference, and I haven't found the figure in the reports. But I did do the math, trying to figure out, well, is it really $1 billion? It comes up a little bit short, depending on, I think even if you multiply it by 7 to 1, if you use 7 TT dollars to 1 US as your exchange rate. But the other thing about this to me, because you said it was what, 20 years, 50, I can't remember but at the end of the day, one could argue, one could make the case that a good 5 to 7 years was lost because of politics, because of the previous administration. Now, is this a situation, because it seems as though the opposition leader was doubling down, saying this is political persecution, right? Trying to defend the stance of, well, the minister made a case in the press conference that, nothing was done during their time, and it took until 2017 to actually get the case back started again. Is this something of a mark against the opposition party?
Well, what do you mean?
Because they would have essentially sat on $1 billion judgment, or for all intents and purposes. They did not pursue this for their time there, and the case had to be restarted to some degree when the current administration came in. Now, I mean, let's not go into whose party is whose. It's just on the surface of it, right? So maybe there's an angle, but on the surface of it, to me, it seems as though, well, politics, one side wanted to not really pursue the matter, but this matter, we're talking big money here, that also technically included criminal convictions in the states previously.
Politics are always going to have a role to play in any litigation in which the state is involved. Like, for example, the judgment of the fake oil scandal.
Right, yeah.
So that is one. And there's also this judgment, his name slips my mind now, the gas to liquid plant at Petrotrin. Politics played a role in that as well. But would I say it's a stain on the opposition? I don't think it's a huge stain on the opposition, simply because there's so many other stains. It kind of covers up this one.
I mean, AV drilling was, what, less than 100 million? This is $1 billion.
No, I know. If you look at it at the magnitude, but it's also been acquired over time. It's been 20 years. But overall, the opposition's defense of political persecution, no. I mean, I didn't expect anything else from the opposition. But let's be honest with you, there is always some level of motivation involved politically. There is always some level. But again, my entire argument is if there is allegations of wrongdoing and an investigation takes place and it's taken to court, you found guilty, excellent. My concern now is because there is an understanding of political influence, what would it take to actually enact more investigations into allegations of wrongdoing? And I hope we learn something from this case. It's unfortunate it's taken 20 years, but...
The irony is there's conflict of interest both ways. There is the conflict of interest to not prosecute, and then there's the conflict of interest to pursue the matter. So this is one of those things where it kind of breaks the principles of which we were debating with other conflicts of interest that governments of the land have faced, like with the appointment of Silk and etc. It's a case where, look, at the end of the day, we're not going to fault the government for pursuing this matter, even though they obviously, as you pointed out, had a political motivation. It doesn't necessarily mean that the decision was wrong or unethical. I will just say this to close it out, though. Ideally, this case would be something of a warning. Hey, if you're thinking about, corruption, careful, you might end up having to pay treble the damages.
I don't think so.
Right, that's the thing. If you do it like this and get caught like this.
Remember, the entire thing is, one, what is it going to take to enact an investigation? Two, it's going to take some time.
Well, not
These
just that.
cases take time.
Just the fact that there are accusations against the current administration, they don't have to be proven. But the fact that they exist, I think, undermines any sort of messaging that this result from this case could have provided
I would prefer that
us.
when accusations are raised, they're raised with some form or some level of evidence. That helps the situation.
Yes.
That also helps the public contextualize it and to also understand, listen, this is very important and we actually need to deal with the situation.
Unfortunately, that is politics on a whole, around the world, but
Politics.
in TNT, of course,